Hello and welcome to the North Kinder Media Podcast. We'd love to welcome our special guest and friend, the Honorable Nate Glubish. He is the Minister of Technology and Innovation for Alberta, and as well as the MLA for Strathcona County and Sherwood Park. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, let's get started. We have a lot of questions to ask him, especially on the business forefront. And yeah, let's talk about that. So before you got into government, what is your background and experience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Amazing.
And looking forward to a good chat. Yeah, so I was first elected in 2019, which feels like forever ago. But really, it's only been 5-6 years. And so before that, I spent most of my career as a venture capital investor. Mm-hmm. I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan in 2004 with a Bachelor of Commerce. Mm-hmm. I majored in finance, so my whole goal was getting involved in investing in and building businesses. And then I moved back to Alberta in 2004 to start my career. And I started working with a venture capital fund called Foundation Equity. Okay. And just had a chance to start as an analyst and worked my way up to partner, essentially just investing in and building Alberta tech companies. Yeah. So we were, it didn't matter what kind of tech, but we were just focused on, it had to be something really innovative. Yep. Something new, using technology to solve a problem in new ways. And so, I had the opportunity to invest in all kinds of really cool companies, medical technology companies, enterprise software companies, you name it. And then I did a short stint after that for 4 years, leading the mergers and acquisitions for a heavy industrial company called NCSG Crane and Heavy Haul, headquartered in Atchison. We bought about 8 or 9 companies across North America, doubled the company in size, and then we sold a majority stake of that.
That's great.
To a private equity fund in Calgary called TriWest. And then after that, I joined Yaletown Partners, going back into the venture space. Did that for a couple of years, and then leading into the 2019 election, decided to make the shift into public life and ran for office in Strathcona Sherwood Park, and now here I am.
Wow.
So what made you make the shift from wanting to get into politics?
Yeah, the couple of reasons. I mean, it was not part of the plan. Let me tell you that. I didn't go to university saying I want to be a politician. I don't think there's a lot of people that do that.
You weren't a poli-sci major or something like that.
But not a lot of people, set out to say, this is what I want to do with my life. I always thought I was going to be a businessman. I was going to be an investor. I was going to help tech companies grow and reach their fullest potential. There's 2 key reasons. One of the reasons was, when I first started as a VC in 2004, there was not a very active technology scene in Alberta. We had some brilliant researchers, but we weren't very good as a province yet at taking that research and commercializing it, turning it into new intellectual property, turning it into new businesses, creating new jobs, and attracting investment from the venture space. And we had made some progress over the years since 2004, but I thought to myself, you know what? We've never had someone in the Alberta government who comes from the tech sector, who has been an investor, who has invested their own money into building Alberta tech companies, maybe who has the stripes on their back to show for it, right? I've learned a few lessons. I've had some big wins, and I've had a couple of strikeouts, and that's normal in that business. But I thought, imagine if the Alberta government had someone from that background who had that experience, who had that personal network of Alberta entrepreneurs and innovators and researchers and investors, and could bring that insight into public policy and helping to form the Alberta government's policy when it comes to innovation. What could we accomplish if we had someone like that in government? So I thought, this might be something where I could bring a unique skill set to government and help Alberta become more innovative. And my thought was, I'd love for Alberta to be the most innovative jurisdiction in Canada, both in terms of how we use technology inside of government to solve problems, to deliver services, giving Albertans better, faster, smarter services, but also how we create that environment to make Alberta a destination of choice for innovators, for inventors, for investors, to say, if you're going to build something new and transformative and revolutionary and exciting with technology, you should do it here. So that is really what one of the things that really drove me to wanting to transition out of the private sector and into public life, and it's been a wild ride.
That sounds That is really cool. So it's one of those ways, like, how do you get the message out there? Because you have a chance to attend a lot of tech conferences and get invited to do that. So is that one way that you get to meet people? And I have to ask, have you met Elon Musk? Because I know you go to a lot of tech conferences. Or who have you met that would just be like, wow, that's cool?
Well, I have met a lot of really interesting folks through this job. I think that's one of the fun parts of being a minister. I can tell you, I have not met Elon Musk. Working with his company, SpaceX and Starlink, on our broadband file.
Okay.
So even though I haven't talked to the big man himself, my team and I, we are in regular conversations with the folks at SpaceX and Starlink as we look to say what role might low Earth orbit satellite technology play in helping rural Albertans who live in the most remote stretches of our province get access to reliable high-speed internet. So that's some ongoing discussions that we're having with them. Maybe one of these days
That's
I'll
close.
get a chance
That's
to
close.
meet. Yeah. But I will say, to your point, telling Alberta's story, it's important. We've got a great story to tell. Nobody's going to tell it but us. And so one of the things that I enjoy about this job is that I get to get out there and tell Alberta's story to all kinds of interesting people. I mean, of course, I'm telling the story of Alberta's technology vision to all Albertans, but then I'm also telling the story of what's exciting in Alberta's tech sector today to people all around the world, because we want to encourage the smartest people in the world to say, I want to spend time in Alberta. I want to collaborate with Alberta companies and entrepreneurs. Or maybe I want to relocate to Alberta and build the next big company here instead of somewhere else. And we're seeing that happen all the time. But, among the folks who I've met that I think are some pretty neat folks that I've enjoyed getting to know, I've got to meet Patrick Pichette. One of the things that was really exciting about his background is he was Google's CFO for almost 10 years. He wasn't just the CFO, he ran a ton of their business units, including, I think, HR and a few other things. And at a really large growth period for them. And so I've learned a little bit about some of his journey there. He also served on the board of directors. I think he was the chairman of the board of Twitter during the period of time when they were selling to Elon Musk. So Patrick had lots of really interesting stories to tell about the Twitter sale to Elon Musk. Of course, that was a very public process.
Oh, yeah.
It's an unprecedented deal, like a private citizen buying a $44 billion social media company.
No big deal for him, apparently.
But so how I met Patrick is he's now a part of a venture fund in Canada called Inovia. Now, Inovia is the biggest venture fund in Canada, the most assets under management. They are also the most successful in terms of their return on investment.
Amazing.
And I know one of their partners from Calgary, Sean Abbott, who, by the way, is one of the inventors of the USB key. Not a modern technology, but it was a big deal when it happened back in the day.
That's a big deal.
And Sean and I had co-invested in a couple deals together in the early 2000s.
Wow.
And so through Sean, I've met Patrick. They're now partners together. And Sean and Patrick have been giving us some advice on innovation policy.
Very cool.
Couple other interesting folks I've met. I've met Jim Balsillie. So he was the co-founder and co-CEO of Research in Motion, which is the company behind the BlackBerry. And that was one of Canada's biggest tech successes. Like, we're talking tens of billions of dollars of wealth created for Canadians. And it really kick-started the Waterloo, that Ontario tech corridor, headquartered around Waterloo, because that company, became so successful that thousands of employees became millionaires through stock options.
Yep.
And so now you have all of these thousands of employees who are all tech specialists.
Yeah.
They've all had the experience in building a company from zero to billions.
Yep.
And they now have material wealth. They're independently wealthy. But they all have ideas of their own. And they're saying, oh, well, me and my 5 friends who all work together at BlackBerry want to go and start our own thing.
Yeah.
And they could self-fund it for the early stages, and then they could rapid prototype and get it to a much bigger company without having to slave away trying to raise money on an idea. They could instead say, we know enough to know our idea is real. We'll fund it ourselves. We'll build that first stage. And then when they went to go raise money from a venture investor, they could raise money at a much higher valuation.
Absolutely.
And it was a lot easier to raise money. So it just built this huge momentum in Ontario's tech sector. And so I've enjoyed getting to know Jim. He's been giving us a lot of great advice on how do we make sure that we're not just good at research and then sending all that intellectual property to American companies, because Canada has been good at that. That's not something to be proud of. We should be proud of the outstanding research we do, but we need to focus more on finding how do we translate that into Canadian companies, and in our case, Alberta companies, and making sure that we are not just creating great companies that get bought out, we're creating great companies that become the buyers and consolidators of other innovation and technology happening all around the world for the benefit of Canada and Alberta's economy. So Jim's a real passionate advocate for that. And I guess another interesting person that I've met with is Kevin O'Leary. People love him or they hate him.
Shark Tank.
But Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame. So how that came about is we're trying to position Alberta as one of the best places in North America to build the next generation of AI infrastructure. And so we call these AI data centers. So they're essentially these really big supercomputers in a warehouse that require an enormous amount of electricity. But ultimately that is what is powering all of the revolutionary transformative breakthroughs in AI for every industry, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in robotics, you name it. And we believe there's an enormous opportunity to build that infrastructure in Alberta. And so we connected with Kevin and his team. They aspire to build a lot of this infrastructure. And they got really excited about what we have to offer. So
did they contact you, or did you contact them?
How did that all
this?
come about?
Yeah.
So we knew that they were in the market to develop some of this infrastructure, and I've been out selling Alberta for the last year. I've made 4 trips to Silicon Valley. I've met with, I guess another person I met with is Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, who's behind all of the AI chips that are powering these data centers. I've met with key officials from Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, you name it, and any of the big, we call them hyperscalers, the big companies that are built around AI now. I've met with Microsoft and their key executives on the data center file. And so, Kevin got wind of that. We got into touch. He mentioned they're looking to build the biggest data center in the world. And once we told them what Alberta has to offer, they said, "This is great. Let's do it here." And so now they're working on this. If it comes to
we've heard about
full
it, right?
scale.
Yeah, it's been a big buzz. Everybody in Alberta wants to know what is going on. I mean, obviously, how real is it? Like you said, you've been working. How long have you been, if you're allowed to say, how long have you been working on this, or what's kind of the timelines that you could see?
So we began working on the data center strategy back in March of last year, so almost a year ago.
Okay.
And it sort of started when I was at an AI conference in California. I was the only politician invited to this conference. It was a collaboration between University of Toronto and Creative Destruction Labs, as well as Stanford's Digital Economy Lab and some folks at MIT. And they had invited all the hyperscalers, all the big names who are behind all of the AI algorithms and platforms today. They invited a bunch of economists, a bunch of researchers. Alberta's own rock star researcher Richard Sutton was there. He's the godfather of reinforcement learning. He literally wrote the book. He invented the field of reinforcement learning. And
I need to get him a T-shirt that says "I'm the Godfather." I can do that.
Hey, I can find him for you. If you want to make that, I can make that happen. But so he was there, but the organizers had invited me because they said, "Well, Nate, you're the only politician in North America we know of who's really been actively trying to understand AI from a policy-making perspective and trying to find ways to implement AI in government to deliver better services and to create an environment where AI can and technology development can thrive. So we'd like to bring you in so you can meet some of these folks and offer that perspective from a policymaker lens." And what I learned there was like, oh my goodness, the amount of infrastructure these guys need to build. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in the next 5 years in North America alone. And their biggest problem is access to electricity at scale, speed to market. And I thought to myself, well, we're really good at both of those things in Alberta. So, like, we have a history of red tape reduction. In the last 4 years, we've reduced Alberta's red tape by 33%, saving
massive.
Alberta businesses and Albertans over $3 billion in that time frame.
That's amazing.
And so when we go to businesses like, Kevin O'Leary's team and say, we have a track record of getting stuff done fast, we can say that and it's rooted in fact. It's not just a politician saying, trust me, we'll work fast. No, we actually have a track record. And so I knew on the speed to market we could be a competitive player. And I knew on the electricity side we can too, because what does Alberta have in abundance? We have among the world's largest natural gas reserves, in the entire world.
Yeah.
And we've got a 50 or 60-year track record of developing it responsibly at scale. So we know how to get it out of the ground. We know how to get it to a power plant. We know how to work with power plant proponents to build power plants at scale. And so I started pitching to these folks. I said, hey, we can solve your two biggest problems: speed to market, reliable power at scale, cheap, reliable power. Let's talk about what that means for you and your business. And so we just started building up all of this attention from all the folks that are building this infrastructure. And so when we started talking to Kevin and his team, we said, like, what if you want to build the biggest data center in the world, you want to build a 5 gigawatt data center campus, if you could build it with an off-grid power generation, so you build the power generation and you build the data center. That way it doesn't have any negative impact on Alberta's electricity grid. It doesn't affect reliability. It doesn't affect affordability. Ordinary ratepayers like you and me who are just paying for power for our homes, we don't have to worry about this project impacting the grid. Then let's work together on making sure that all the natural gas producers can meet the volume of gas that you need. Let's pick a site that makes sense, that's close to the gas, and where you can develop the power generation and you can develop the data center. And let's make sure that there's also a proximity to the talent that's required for building that infrastructure and then running it. And ultimately they got really excited about this facility out just outside of Grand Prairie. It's in a municipality called Greenview. And Greenview had this industrial park that was pre-zoned. A bunch of the consultation, a bunch of the approvals had already been done. They didn't know it was going to be a data center, but they're like, we believe there's going to be a large industrial application that makes sense, that fits into the Grand Prairie region. And we want to do all the groundwork on spec so that when a big project comes forward, they can say, oh, we could save a couple of years if we go to Greenview.
Yeah, it's great.
So they were already building it and had it in motion. So
they weren't building the infrastructure, but they had the vision to say, something big is going to come to Alberta. We want to make sure it happens in our jurisdiction. There's a lot of things that these large industrial projects have in common. Let's do all the grunt work on the approvals ahead of time. And so they were able to offer to this project to say, we've done a couple of years of legwork for you. It'll save you a ton of time. And that got the O'Leary folks really excited. So they've got a letter of intent on the land. They're doing their due diligence. They're doing a lot of their engineering work right now, and they're raising some capital to fund that initial stage. Their vision is to build about 1 to 1.5 gigawatts of power generation first. And they know that if they can get that underway and shovels in the ground, then they can go to the hyperscalers and say, it's a done deal, it's approved, it's shovels in the ground, it will be ready in 12 to 18 months. So that's about how long it takes to build a data center. If you want that power, come to Grand Prairie, come to Greenview with us, and we will build that for you and we will supply you with the power. And given what I've heard in my conversations with all the big hyperscalers is, they're desperate for the electricity. So anybody that can give them reliable long-term electricity at reasonable rates, that's where they're going to build their data centers. So I think, is it a done deal? It's not finished yet, but it's very real.
It's in a positive direction.
And so we are working with O'Leary's team the same way we're working with all the other project proponents from other companies that are interested in building data centers and power generation in Alberta. I've set up a concierge team in my department. So we have daily meetings with their team, and we're just looking to say, what do you need from environment? What do you need from energy? What do you need from our utilities ministry? Who are the folks that make decisions about the things you're working on right now, and how do we get you quick answers? Because time is money, and what we have said, we are not going to subsidize this. We're not going to do a tax credit. The taxpayer's not going to pay for a dime. But time is money, and what we can give you is the gift of time, and they love it. They're super excited.
Well, it's going to be such a big benefit to Alberta. I mean, businesses around there, the spin-off, obviously, like in a data center of that size, how many people will that employ on a full-time? Is there actually a lot of people that are involved in maintaining it or running it, or is it more just build it and get it up and running?
So, of course, just like with a refinery or a petrochemical plant, the jobs on the construction side, much larger. And then afterwards, the permanent full-time jobs to run it and maintain it is a little bit lower, but it's
Yeah.
still meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I've had a lot of folks say, "Well, it's not that many jobs," but what they're looking at is the old school data centers, like the data centers to store stuff, or data centers for cloud operations. And it's true that you don't need as many people for that, but for the AI data centers, there's a lot of personnel required. In part also because they're upgrading the chips and the processors so regularly. You're always swapping equipment in and out and reconfiguring and making sure that you've got the uptime. So we're talking a lot of really cool, high-paying tech jobs in Alberta once this stuff gets built.
Well, and suppliers too, to maintain those things and to replace them.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
So Calgary has a company called Cool IT. And kind of like NVIDIA started as a graphics card company for games and then turned into the world's largest AI company.
Yeah.
Cool IT started as a liquid cooling solution for high-end gaming computers and has turned into one of the certified vendors for NVIDIA for cooling AI data center chips and infrastructure. And so they're embedded in NVIDIA's architecture. They get to be a part of they get line of sight ahead of time on the next generation of what's coming on, and then they engineer cooling technology that would be certified as an authorized choice in an approved architecture by NVIDIA. And they're based in Calgary.
Yeah.
They just got bought out by KKR, a massive private equity fund, and they're investing like $350 million to double in size.
Wow.
So and there's several other companies like that. So they specialize in cooling. There's a company called Denver Data Works that specializes in a different part of the supply chain, and I think a company called CES in Atchison that also has some great expertise. So we have a lot of the expertise in Alberta to supply a lot of the equipment and the expertise to build and maintain this infrastructure. So this could be a huge boom.